Well, what we can see is that Israel is withdrawing its forces from some parts of Lebanon. We understand that there has been a third withdrawal before the advancing Lebanese army, who's taking sorts of deployments. This time around, it was in Naqoura, which is on the western sector or the western tip, the southernmost western tip of Lebanon. Equally, they moved some tanks, as you rightly said, to Beit Leave, so they're continuing to search, attack there. It hasn't been a real ceasefire. But I think they're reinforcing their forces along the Lebanese border because we've heard some Lebanese MP or as a spokesperson yesterday saying that the Hezbollah is monitoring the situation and they're going to decide at the end of the 60 days, which should be around 3 or 3.5 weeks from now, whether the ceasefire has endured enough or not. And if not, then the Hezbollah militia would take matters into their own hands, providing that or assuming that there would be still Israeli forces inside Lebanon. So they're waiting to see whether this ceasefire has of 60 days has ended up with all Israeli forces withdrawing to the Israeli side of the border. And probably the Israelis are thinking there might be some resumption to the hostilities.
Well, Mr. Ammar, Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem recently emphasized the growing strength of the resistance in Lebanon. Now, how
Yeah.
might Hezbollah respond, from your point of view, to Israel's military buildup along the Blue Line?
Just like it did before they entered Lebanon a few months back. And look, Hezbollah's strength is, we think it's still there. There hasn't, but yeah, there's been a lot of talk about demolishing its ability to launch rockets and so on, but we haven't really seen that. What we saw is continuation of rocket launching, about 200 rockets a day, different distances, some of them really reaching as far south as Tel Aviv, and also the Israeli army finding it really, really difficult to have meaningful incursions in the south of Lebanon. And so, should hostilities reignite, then we shouldn't expect anything less than that. In fact, we would be we would be under. There would be some 2 months of re-preparation, licking their wounds, reorganization, especially after the entire leadership had been decapitated by Israel. So we could probably presume that the Hezbollah would come even stronger should hostilities resume, that is.
Then, how do you evaluate statements by the Israeli side about remaining in Lebanon after the end of the 60-day truce,
Mm.
which definitely this violates the ceasefire agreement?
I think what the Israelis are looking for at this moment in time is some guarantees that their own population could go back to their houses and start rebuilding in the north of Palestine, Israel. And what they would want is to guarantee some sort of a meaningful truce or a long-term truce along the lines of UN resolution, Security Council resolution 1701, and which means that the Lebanese army would deploy at the border most points of southern Lebanon with Israel, and that Hezbollah would retreat back some of its forces. It may be in the interest of Hezbollah to do so, having lost a huge strategic ally as the previous Syrian government, and then the whole region is really in reshape at this moment in time. So it could be in their interest not to resume hostilities. Equally, though, it could be with the Israelis' interest to deal like a much bigger blow to Lebanon or Hezbollah in order to force Hezbollah to surrender its weapons and really take into consideration the or influence the dynamics inside Lebanon, which we would see within a few days' time with the
You mean here that they would,
re-election.
you
Mm,
mean here that they would rearrange their own
mm,
strategies?
mm. It would depend. For example, on the 9th of January, the Lebanese parliament is to sit and try to elect a new Lebanese president. Should the outcome doesn't feel attractive enough to the Israelis, they might want to do something on the ground to force the Lebanese hand. If there is like a regional agreement, the Saudis, for example, managed to influence the result, and Hezbollah plays ball with some guarantees, because the last thing they would need is a Lebanese president who would stab them in the back, as the previous Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah put it